So, author diaries continue, and this time I'm going to talk about the experience, or at least my experience, of putting together an audiobook and finding and working with a narrator. So, a couple of things about this. An audiobook was a stretch goal of the Kickstarter because I hit my initial goal frighteningly fast and then came up with a couple of stretch goals, the second of which being an audiobook, which is something that I have been working on. And I don't know if the way that I've gone about this is what is standard, but I'm just going to share my experience of how I've gone about it and what that experience has been like. I suppose the first thing that I should address, because I know some people have asked and have wondered, why don't I just do the audiobook myself? I fancy myself a performer. I would like to do more voice work in general. Why would I deprive myself of the opportunity? There's a couple reasons for that. The first is I don't know if I have the time without falling behind on a bunch of other stuff. It's been hard enough for me just to get the edit sorted in the time that I've got, and even that's taken longer than I would like. So that's part of it. Another part is because I raised money specifically for the audiobook, given that it's a known fact that I already own decent audio equipment and editing software and the rest of it, if I did the voice work myself, there'd be an accountability issue basically asking what the heck was the money for? Because you said to do an audiobook and then you just did it yourself. Why did you need the extra money? So part of it's that. And then also part of it is really I just want Dreams of Fire to be professional grade at every level that I'm able to make it that. Obviously, my writing is whatever people make of it. But when it came to things like the cover, the illustrations, the maps, the getting an editor, and now the voice work, I wanted everything to be... I've been working on the story so long, I want it presented the best it can possibly be. And while I can be quite egotistical about my abilities as a performer, I was paranoid enough that I'm like, what if somebody else would be better? So I set about having auditions for a narrator. Now, I had kind of 3 tiers of plan for this. My actual first round did the job, but I'll go through what I had as backups as well. So what I did initially actually was just put out an open call. On Twitter and on Facebook, I just said, hey, I'm going to be having auditions for narration for my audiobook. If you would like to give it a try, get in touch with me. Or if you know someone who does voice work who might be interested, have them get in touch with me. And if that had yielded either no replies at all, or nobody that I felt was properly suited to the work, because that was one thing, like I wanted to be sure that I didn't settle. So if I didn't find someone through that, my second tier plan was I had begun the research of looking into the resources of, putting out calls in these professional spaces as opposed to just on Twitter and on Facebook. So I knew places to go to find people who do this for a living. If none of them found me, or someone who was willing to work with me on that level and worked for what I wanted to hear, if we never connected. And then final ultimate backup was I would just do it myself. And the only way that was ever going to happen is if I went through the open call and then I went to places trying to find actors, and time was passing and I just wasn't finding anybody, or the people who I were finding, it just didn't sound right. Like, if I truly couldn't find someone who I think would have done a better job than I would do, then I would have done it myself. But I needed to know I went through the process first. And as it turns out, that initial open call, I did find somebody. I had a number, I'll get to the actual person who who I hired in a little bit. But the process was that I picked a sample chapter, not especially long, but it included dialogue from 3 different characters and was short enough that it was, I thought, reasonable to, it came back like 8 minutes or so, 8 to 10 minutes. And so it gave me a chance to hear how a narrator would read the general narrative voice of the work and how they would sound, the ways that they would differentiate their voice when playing different characters. The chapter in question had a middle-aged male character, a teenage male character, and a female character in her 30s. So, and with very different personalities for all 3. So, hearing how that came across gave me a sense of what those voice actors would bring. Here's another thing. Like I had mentioned when I talked about getting illustrators and things like that, find out what their rates are before you get too far down the road and make sure that, know what your budget is. Make sure that they can come in on your budget. And if they can't, figure that out before you send them an audition piece to work on and before they start sinking time into it. Because if it turns out, if you go, oh, you're going to be perfect, and then they give you their rates and you're like, I can't afford this, then you've wasted both of your time by doing that. So always sort out rates before. Figure that out first. Whether it's just a matter of asking them what their rates for something like this is, generally you're going to need to know your word count for the finished piece. Find out what their rates are. And because much like with the illustrators, respect what they say their time is worth. Don't haggle if you can avoid it. If you have to go like, oh, okay, well, you're saying this, like, I can't quite afford that, but I'm close. Will this work? Like, that's one thing. But if they say one number, don't say, oh, how about half that? Don't do that. Never do that. But anyways, so either know their rates and just respect their rates, or know what your budget is and say going in, this is what I'm prepared to pay for this. And they'll either say yes or no and then audition from there. It was interesting listening to the audition reads because different people gave me some different things. Most of them just sent back, one reading. And it was funny. I could kind of hear one of them, had a very good voice, but I could kind of hear it in the voice that they tend to do more commercial style work. There was another one who I don't think had done professional work before and was quite good, but I could tell that it was a little bit rough around the edges. There was one who I came very close to hire. This basically came down between this person and the person I did ultimately end up hiring. The one who I was in close contention, they actually sent me 3 different reads with 3 different style of voice, which might be a little bit overkill, and I'm not sure if that would normally be advisable. I found it helpful because it showed me that this performer wasn't just locking in, this is the way to do it, that they were prepared to offer options and to work with me and figuring out the best ones. The person who I ultimately ended up hiring is a voice actress from Scotland named Aaliyah Torrey. She just had a quality to her voice that, to my ear, had the fantastical, the sort of telling of a folklore tale in terms of her vocal delivery and the way that she chose to read my words that really did nail what I want. And like, I got auditions from both male and female narrators because I didn't know in my head what I wanted in terms of that. I knew sort of a general tone, and like a lot of this is going to be intuitive. A lot of this is just going to be, you hear it either sounds right or it doesn't. But I didn't know if a man or a woman was going to be more appropriate. But when I heard her voice, I'm like, yeah. Now, once she and I agreed to do this together, which is it's very exciting. The next thing that I ended up doing, and I don't know if this is standard, given that she'd said nobody else had done this with her, I'm starting to think it might not be, but I thought it was very helpful because while she absolutely nailed the general narrative voice and the voice of most of the characters, one of the characters, her vocal delivery was totally valid, but it wasn't quite what I was going for. And given that I'm not going to be able to work with her like in a recording booth, she, is going to be working in isolation and sending me the finished work. I wanted to figure out a way to work with her on character voices and make sure that the tones and the personalities coming across in the characters were what I wanted. Because this was a case with the character who is kind of cold and distant, and her initial reading, which again, for the chapter and the pages she had, her reading made sense. It was originally a bit more just sort of grouchy and almost kind of Batman-y, which would have been a valid way to do the character, but wasn't quite what I was after. And so what I ended up doing to make sure that we were on the same page across the board, and it wouldn't be a case of I get audio back and realize she's recorded a ton of stuff doing a characterization and a vocal performance on a character, and we're like, oh no, that's not quite it. And then she has to redo work again, wasting both of your times. So what I did was I sent her, before even starting actual recording for the book, I sent her a bunch of sides. If you're familiar with acting, when you go to audition, you get a character side, which is just a brief description of the character and the scene that you're going to be playing. So what I sent her was the main character and the primary supporting characters, and gave their age, gave a description of their general personality, and maybe one or two key recent events that might impact the way she chooses to perform them, and sort of a primary emotional key in terms of, like, more than anything else, this is what they are. And then providing a short, like not a full chapter, but just like a short segment where that character has a decent amount of dialogue, so that she can, having seen those character breakdowns, she can then get back to me, and I was able to listen to those, give notes where necessary, and then we're both on the same page, and I'm not sitting here nervous that what I get back isn't going to be what I want. And again, redo it, everybody's time wasted. So that's the process that I've gone through. Where I'm at right now is actually I have just sent her the first few chapters finalized, edited, finalized, for her to start working on. And then I'll hopefully have another batch for her by the time she's set with those. This is a really amazing process. And again, I don't know if the way I've gone about it is atypical or stupid even, but that's how I have approached this, and I'm enjoying the process so far, and I expect to be quite happy with the results. So that's it for this one, folks. I don't know how many more I've got in me in the immediate future for the author diaries, but I'm sure there will be more at some point. So thank you very much for listening. I have a Patreon, and obviously I'll give you updates about the book as it becomes available in multiple forms now. Whatever your thoughts are, drop them down in the comments. Let's talk about it. Like, share, subscribe, but you don't have to do any of it. Take a relaxed attitude around here so you can come on back next time you need a break.